I don't know why. I just have always liked Thursdays. It used to be back in the day when I was much younger and in Chicago that Thursday was the big night out. You know, people would go out, have a drink, have some fun. When I was in the nightclub business a little bit, Thursdays was always just an awesome night. And I guess maybe I still love Thursdays because of that. And also, well, we're almost done with a week. And oh, what a week. We got a lot to talk about today, of course, which seems like we have a lot to talk about every day. We got some great guests as well today on everything from playing poker to how one falls into this sort of skinhead kind of violent anti-Semitic culture and then gets out of it. We're going to talk to a guy who's been through all of that. And I've actually had a couple listeners, this is more on the practical side, asking me if I can help get some information on the air about working from home and the tax consequences of it, believe it or not. Like, do your deductions change? What else do you need to know about working from home as far as taxes? So we're going to do that actually at 7:35 with a gentleman named Paul Meyer, who's a senior tax manager at the Plant Moran accounting firm. So a big range of stuff to talk about today. I'm also kind of excited because I think Done Right Kitchen and Bath is doing the last work on my kitchen today, or almost the last work at least. I think we're basically going to have a kitchen after, well, like 4 or 5 hours from now. And it's very exciting, and I do want to say thanks to Done Right for doing such a great job for me. No, they're not advertising with me. They're not paying me to say that. They're not going to start advertising with me. I just wanted to say thank you because they did a good job. It's that simple. Nothing more to it than that. Yesterday, we spent a little bit of time, and I've been thinking about this some more, talking about protecting statues and all that. And part of what I think the newly awoken ultra-radicals who are making their way around various parts of the United States, part of what they want is violence. And I don't just mean that they want to commit violence, although I do think plenty of them are looking for an excuse to do that. I think that they hope that law enforcement will commit violence against them while they are off doing whatever it is they're doing, whether they're doing something that's illegal or something that's not, and they don't really care which it is. They want police violence. They are willing to be beaten or whatever if it ends up causing more turmoil and getting us closer to revolution in the United States of America. So if you want to protect, and you could talk about this a lot of different ways, right? With the statues coming down, talk about erasing history. For me, separate from erasing history, my biggest problem with the way this is all going with the statues is that this is simply mob rule. This doesn't remind me of the American Revolution. It reminds me of the French Revolution. And, right, that's a time when everything got destroyed and people got guillotined, and then those people turned on themselves, and the leader of some leaders of some of that stuff got guillotined, and that's just, that feels like this. There's a reason, by the way, that a lot of America's founding fathers, with the obvious exception of Thomas Jefferson, were not big fans of the French Revolution. A lot of people died. A lot of civilians died. I don't just mean soldiers, like in the American Revolution, right? Or American farmers who became soldiers to liberate us from tyranny. I guess the Black Lives Matter people must feel like they're doing the same thing. Anyway, I don't, but we'll get to that in a minute. So what about these protecting the statues? I'm okay with some process in the future whereby there's an actual deliberative conversation among people, among their elected representatives, public forums, whatever, where the citizens of a particular town have a conversation, even a vote if you want, however you want to do it that's peaceful, about a statue of whoever up in a public park in that town, and then decide what they want to do with it. And if they want to take it down, take it down. I think a lot of these things do belong in places where they can be seen again and talked about. But since the Black Lives Matter movement, since they want police violence, maybe what we do is find a different way to protect the statues. And I mentioned this briefly yesterday in passing, and the more I think about it, the more I like this idea, even though it's not without risk. And that is, have Americans who aren't radicals or ignorant lunatics being led around by radicals, have those people, have us, stand around statues. No guns, no knives. But what I'd really like to see is people who've got some kind of training in martial arts, standing around the statues, and when the radical and wear masks if you want, just like the radicals do. Play their game that way if you want. I'm fine either way. I can imagine a good argument in either direction. No, I'm proud to show my face. Or if you're in a liberal city and you don't want some Democratic mayor to try to score political points by going after the people who don't believe in mob rule, then wear the same kind of mask that the radicals do, and encircle the statues, and don't let anyone get to them. Don't let anyone get near a statue to put up a rope to try to pull it down. And then, if the radical, does something to you, puts a hand on you, you fight back. You do whatever you got to do. Don't kill anybody. Don't maim anybody. Don't hurt anybody more badly than they need to be hurt. Just stop them from getting to the statue. And if all that takes is, no, sir, you're not getting through here, then stop there. If they push you and you push them back and they stop, then you stop there. Don't do anything more than need be. Just protect. Again, for me, it's not even so much about protecting whatever the statue is, whether it's a statue of someone I love, someone I don't love, someone I don't know, someone I've never heard of. That's not the point. We cannot be governed and pushed around by the mob. And it would be great to see all around the country people who believe that stand up against this mob. And we'll see again. We talked about this briefly yesterday. There's the statue of the Emancipation statue in Lincoln Park in Washington, D.C. And it's Abraham Lincoln is standing, and there's a slave about to be freed who's kneeling. He's shirtless and shoeless. And some people don't like the statue because it shows a shirtless, shoeless slave. But it shows the moment in American history that more than any other single moment represents the freeing of the slaves. We talked about it yesterday. I'm sure you've seen it on the news. A statue that was largely funded by free slaves and dedicated at the time by Frederick Douglass, one of the great black figures in American history, abolitionist, obviously. And the radical vandals they were trying to get it down a couple nights ago. They couldn't. They said they were going to come back Thursday. Now they're maybe saying they're going to come back Friday. But in the meantime, the Trump administration has activated the National Guard, according to Fox News, has activated the National Guard to protect some of these monuments, I guess. And, we should try to get the guy on the show But Interior Secretary David Bernhardt, who's been on the show a couple times, he's from Rifle, Colorado, requested the National Guard to protect statues and other historical markers. So, and the Pentagon, according to Fox News, has confirmed that roughly 400 D.C. Guard members have been activated and are on standby. And that's fine. Guard's good. The Guard's better than the police for this in terms of the politics of it. Because, again, what these people want, they want to goad the police into hurting somebody that they will capture on film and use that as an excuse for even more violence. And we've got to find a way to stop them from being violent and destructive without giving them the propaganda win that they want. I want to share with you a couple of things over the course of the show today. There was an interesting interview on Fox News yesterday following a couple of other public appearances by a guy named Hawk Newsome, who runs Black Lives Matter in New York. And this is truly a revolutionary. But before we get to that, and you may have seen that, but you can imagine what the guy would have said. I mean, we want to burn it down and all that. We'll get to it. But I want to share something else with you that you probably didn't see and didn't hear about, because I find it so eye-opening in the sense that naive leftists often are simply unwilling or unable to live in the real world until the real world kicks them in the teeth. And they've spent all these years telling us, no, you can't live in the real world, you can't do this, you can't do that. And then suddenly reality comes around. And there is a certain schadenfreude in this. Not that liberals are my enemies exactly. I just disagree with them on a lot of things. This is a piece from the New York Times, kind of a long piece, but I want to share some of it with you because there's just so many lessons in it. New York Times piece written by someone named Caitlin Dickerson. And you already know where it's going just based on the headline. A Minneapolis neighborhood vowed to check its privilege. It's already being tested. So first of all, you start an article with check your privilege, like, okay, I'm already against you. But I do want to hear how these people think. So listen to some of this. When Sherry Albers moved 3 decades ago into Powderhorn Park, a tree-lined Minneapolis neighborhood known as a haven to leftist activists and bohemian artists like herself, she went to work sprucing it up. She became a block club leader, organizing her mostly white neighbors to bring in playgrounds and help tackle long-standing issues with crime. On many nights, she banged on the car windows of men who had come to solicit prostitutes outside her door. She kept meticulous notes when dozens of men would gather in a circle for gang meetings in the park across from her house. After each episode, she called the police. But times have changed. After the death of George Floyd at the hands of the police, Miss Albers, who is white, and many of her progressive neighbors have vowed to avoid calling law enforcement into their community. Doing so, they believed, would add to the pain that black residents of Minneapolis were feeling and could put them in danger. Already that commitment is being... So let me just pause there for a second. So that says a lot, doesn't it? Right? That they believe that calling the police will put black people in danger. I'll just leave that without comment. You can decide as you like about that. Already that commitment is being challenged. 2 weeks ago, dozens of multicolored tents appeared in the neighborhood park. They were brought by homeless people who were displaced during the unrest that gripped the city. The multiracial group of roughly 300 new residents seems to grow larger and more entrenched every day. They do laundry, listen to music, and strategize about how to find permanent housing. Some are hampered by mental illness, addiction, or both. And just for the record, I'm guessing that description paints that scene in a much nicer way than it probably is. Their presence has drawn heavy car traffic into the neighborhood, some from drug dealers. At least 2 residents have overdosed in the encampment and had to be taken away in ambulances. The influx of outsiders has kept Ms. Albers awake at night. Though it's unlikely to happen, she's had visions of people from the tent camp forcing their way into her home. She imagines using a baseball bat to defend herself. I love this next line. Not being able to call the police, as she's done for decades, has shaken her. She's not able to call the police because she made herself a promise. Are you kidding me? I'm afraid, she said. I know my neighbors are around, but I'm not feeling grounded in my city at all. Anything could happen. Then they go through and talk about, how this particular neighborhood takes this kind of social justice stuff seriously. And boy, they're big on the May Day socialist parade in that neighborhood. And it's so diverse and all of that. Since the camp appeared, the community has organized shifts for delivering warm meals, medical care, and counseling. They persuaded officials to back off an eviction notice. But many in the neighborhood who were already beleaguered now say they're eager for the campers to move on to stable housing away from the park. I'm not being judgmental, says Carrie Nightshade, 44, who explained that she no longer felt comfortable letting her children, 12 and 9, play in the park by themselves. It's not personal, it's just not safe. On Friday, she sat in a shared backyard with 4 other women who live in neighboring houses. The women, 4 of whom are white, had called a meeting to vent about the camp. Angela Roslick burst into tears, explaining that she had spent the past 4 years fleeing unstable housing conditions and was struggling more than she cared to admit with the chaos the camp had brought into the neighborhood. Linnea Borden said she had stopped walking her dog through the park because she was tired of being catcalled. Rather than turn to law enforcement if they saw anyone in physical danger, they resolved to call the American Indian Movement, which had been policing its own community for years. And it goes on and on. One guy found, Joseph Menkovich found a black man wearing a hospital bracelet passed out in the elevator of his apartment building 2 blocks away from the park. A cop did show up and then left. Cops know they're not wanted. This is the world that mindless progressivism will drive us to. It's a world we can't and won't tolerate. We'll be right back.
This is Denver's Talk Station with Ross Kaminsky now. Tom Martino at 10, 630 KHOW, Denver. Now, Impact Traffic.